The Mighty Miss Malone by Christopher Paul Curtis. Part 1. Chapter 1. Journey to Wonderful. Once upon a time, if I could get away with it, that's how I'd begin every essay I write. Those are the 4 best words to use when you start telling about yourself, because anything that begins that way always finishes with another 4 words. They lived happily ever after. And that's a good ending for any story. I shut my dictionary and thesaurus and went back over my essay for the last time. The best teacher in the world, Mrs. Karen Needham, had given us an assignment to write about our families. I knew, just like always, she was going to love mine. She'd only asked for 2 pages, but this was our last essay for the year, so I wrote 6. Once upon a time in Gary, Indiana, lived a family of 3 very special, very happy, and uniquely talented people. I am the 4th member of that family, and much too modest to include myself in such a grandiose description of their exalted number. But many people say I am of the same ilk, and for that I remain eternally grateful. My mother, Mrs. Margaret Peggy Sutpin Malone, was born here in Gary, Indiana. She is willowy and radiant, and spellbindingly beautiful. She is also very intelligent. She has a great job cleaning for the Carsdale family. Yes, that Carsdale family. The family whose patriarch is the president of the Gary Citizens Bank. Her most endearing trait is that she is the glue holding this family together. Deeza, I jumped and my pencil flew out of my hand. When I'm writing or reading a book, everything else around me disappears. Father says it's because I've settled into what I'm doing, the same way my brother Jimmy does when he's singing. Jimmy, I told you not to sneak up on me like that when I'm writing. He handed me the pencil. I couldn't help it, sis. You were so far gone. What are you writing? My last essay for Mrs. Needham. You know, a lot of people are saying her not coming back to teach is the best thing that ever happened at Lincoln Woods School. James Malone, if I ever give 1/2 a hoot what a lot of people are saying, you have my permission to slap me silly. Mrs. Needham is the best teacher in the world. Now, if you don't mind, I never bother you when you're singing. Don't bother me when I'm writing. But lots of people love listening to me sing, Deeza. Seems to me like only you, that little pest, Clarice Ann Johnson, and Mrs. Needham like reading what you write. Jimmy is one of those people who can say something that might sound mean at first, but when he smiles and makes his eyebrows jump up and down, you can't help smiling. He gets this deep, deep dimple in his right cheek, and you end up laughing right along with him. My dearest friend, Clarice Ann Johnson, has a horrible and completely ununderstandable crush on Jimmy. She says she bets you could pour cornflakes in his dimple and eat them out with a spoon. I'm hoping Clarice's taste in boys improves as she gets older. Jimmy, please. Sorry, sis, I'm heading out. Can I do anything for you before I split? No thanks, just make sure you're back for supper. I looked at Mrs. Needham's instructions again. What is the most annoying trait of some of your family members? That was easy to come up with for Father and Jimmy, but I couldn't think of a single annoying trait for Mother. I wrote, Mother's pet peeve is that she hates the way a lot of people are mean to Jimmy for no reason. Her dreams are to see Father get a job where he doesn't always get laid off, for Jimmy to start growing again and be happy, and to watch me graduate from college and be a teacher. My father, Mr. Roscoe Malone, was born in a village in Michigan called Flint, which is geologically located 250 miles northeast of Gary. For some reason that none of us can understand, he is very proud of this. He is tall and strikingly handsome. He's also intelligent and well-read. He toils and labors mostly for the company, doing work in a horribly hot furnace and sometimes being a janitor. His most annoying trait is the way he uses alliteration every chance he gets. I look up from my paper. That is so true. but I wondered for a minute if I should put it in the essay. It isn't like he can help himself. He always calls me his darling daughter Deeza, and I'm supposed to answer that he is my dearest, delightful daddy. He calls Jimmy the genuine, gentle, jumpin' giant, and Jimmy's supposed to call him his fine, friendly father figure. Father also calls Mother the marvelous mammalian matriarch, but she says she won't respond because she refuses to play silly word games with such a hard-headed husband who hasn't heard how horrible he is. Mother told me, such nonsense is in the blood of the Malones, and you should be happy that so far it looks like you haven't inherited any of it. She says Jimmy is a different story. I tapped the pencil on my teeth. I know it's rude and disloyal to discuss family business with other people, but Mrs. Needham says good writing is always about telling the truth. Father's most endearing trait is that he is the best storyteller and poet in the world. He can come up with a poem at the most inappropriate times. His pet peeve is that even though he's smart, it's very hard to find a job. His dream is to do what he was trained to do in Flint, being a carpenter. The oldest child in our family, Mr. James Edward Malone, is 15 years old and has been blessed with the singing voice of an angel. Jimmy's most annoying trait is that he has what Mother says is a Napoleon complex. That means Jimmy is not as tall or robust as most boys his age and tries to make up for it by being as loud and full of bravado as he can. He also gets in lots of fights. Jimmy's most endearing trait is that he loves me more than any big brother has loved a little sister since time immemorial. Jimmy is the best big brother in the world. On my last birthday, we had just finished eating and I could barely sit still because after supper, the birthday person gets something special. It was my turn to clear the dishes and I stalled around in the kitchen to give them lots of time to get my surprise ready, then walked back into the dining room. There were 2 cupcakes with a candle in the middle of them sitting at my and Jimmy's spots. A chocolate frosted one for me and a vanilla frosted one for Jimmy. I was speechless. Jimmy said, "Wow, Ma, these are store-bought." Mother must have been putting pennies aside for a long time to buy 2 such beautiful little cakes. Father said, "James, please do the honors." Jimmy closed his eyes, then settled into singing, "Happy Birthday." I got chills. I wasn't sure if it was because of Jimmy's voice or because I was so excited. Mother and Father joined in on the last chorus. When they were done, I smiled so hard it felt like my cheekbones were crushing my eyeballs. Jimmy said, "I got you 2 gifts. 1, I'll wash and dry dishes for a week, and 2," he looked at Father and they walked into the other room. When they came back, each one of them was carrying a heavy package wrapped in newspapers. They set them down in front of me. I said, "Flint style or Gary style?" Father always tells us Mother opens packages and envelopes Gary style. He says we Gary people pry and poke and pull the envelope so carefully and daintily and take so long doing it that we might as well be doing brain surgery. He says we do it that way because Indiana people are so cheap that we want to use the same envelope over and over. Word has it, he said once, that there have only been 2 envelopes used in the whole state of Indiana since the War of 1812. Then he showed us what he called opening something Flint style. It was a race to see how quick you could get what was inside the envelope or package out. To be officially Flint style, Father says, the envelope or the wrapping paper has to be shredded into at least 6 different pieces. It's got to look like confetti. I glanced at Mother. She shook her head and said, "I suppose you can't fight the fact that half of your blood is from Flint." I tore into the newspaper on the first present and was shocked. It was old and tired, and I had used it 1,000,000 times before. "How did Jimmy get this?" Jimmy said, "The library was selling books they didn't want anymore. Here's the receipt for these 2. He handed me a piece of paper. He'd paid 3 cents for the dictionary and 2 cents for a thesaurus. Inside the first page of the dictionary, someone had stamped in red ink, "Withdrawn." Jimmy had written underneath that, "February 14th, 1935. Happy 12th birthday, sis." The dictionary and the thesaurus are the best birthday presents I will ever get. The best birthday presents, too. I looked back over my essay. Jimmy's pet peeve is when people call him Shorty, Little Fella, or worst of all, Pee-wee. His dream is to start growing again until he is 6-foot-tall man who is covered with bumpy muscles. Jimmy's other dream is to be the first boy to drive a rocket ship to the moon. He is very delusional. The youngest Malone child, your devoted author of this essay, Diza, is 12 years old, which makes me the third oldest child in my class. I didn't flunk, but 2 years ago I had to sit out a year of school because Mother was struck down by a horrible disease called tic de la rue. That is a French word that means pain of the devil. Her face felt like it was on fire, and she needed a very responsible person to look after her all day. I did it. My teacher said I could skip 4th grade to stay with my class, but being a year behind meant I could be in class with the dearest friend anyone's ever had, Miss Clarice Ann Johnson. I fought to stay, and I won. I am neither very intelligent nor very tall. I also have not been blessed with a beautiful singing voice. I have a pleasingly even disposition unless it's one of those times that I become very angry or scared and have embarrassing wishes to hurt someone real bad. In the next part of the essay, I was supposed to tell about my most annoying trait. I really did try, but I couldn't think of even one. I thought about making one up, but even with my good imagination, nothing came to mind that anyone with a whit of sense would believe. Clarice and I had been walking home. "What do you think is my most annoying trait, Clarice?" She said, "Oh, Diza, you're not done with the essay yet?" "I was just having trouble with that part. You know that I don't think you have any annoying traits, Diza, but—" She stopped. "But what?" "But maybe you could use some of the things other people say about you behind your back." I don't pay a bit of attention to anything people say behind my back, but Mother tells me and Jimmy that we can learn something from anybody, even from a big idiot. I said, "What do they say?" "Well," I thought Clarice might have a problem coming up with something, but she held up a finger. "First, they think you're too friendly with teachers." Her next finger went up. "Second, they say you think you're so smart." Another finger came up. "Third, they say you think your family is so great." Another finger. "Fourth, they say you talk too much and that you talk all proper." Her thumb came up. "Fifth, they think you've got your nose stuck up in a book most of the time." Clarice raised a finger on her left hand. "Sixth." I stopped her before we had to sit so she could take off her shoes and start counting on her toes. I said, "Maybe I do talk a little too much." At home, I put in my essay, "My most annoying trait is that some of the time I might talk a little too much. I can be very verbose. I also exaggerate, but that is because I come from a family of great storytellers, which is not the same as great liars. My most endearing trait, and being as modest as I am, I had to ask my brother for this, is that I have the heart of a champion. Am steady as a rock and can be counted on to do what is required. Jimmy also said I am the smartest kid he has ever met, but my all-encompassing and pervasive humility prevents me from putting that on this list. My first pet peeve is when people don't pronounce my name right. They'll say Diza instead of D. Just like the first syllable of a dessert, like the Sahara, which is geologically an arid, huge part of Africa, and they do it on purpose. My second pet peeve is that the Gary Ironhead Dogs, the best baseball team in the world, have been cursed and will never win the Negro Leagues championship. My dream is to read every book in the Gary Public Library and to be a teacher who has the reputation for being tough but fair, just like Mrs. Needham. I had the perfect ending for the essay. In summation and conclusion, the Malone family has 4 members who are very bright, very good-looking, and uniquely talented. Just not all in one person at the same time. We are the only family in the world, in my ken, that has a motto of our own. The motto is, "We are a family on a journey to a place called wonderful." I can't wait until we get there.